and welcome to the Social Recruiting Show. I'm Katrina Collier. I'm, of course, author of The Robot Proof Recruiter, and I've completely forgotten to show you my book, in case by now you haven't seen it. I'm also a candidate engagement speaker and facilitator. I'm, of course, joined by the very talented talent acquisition professional, that is Mr. Glenn Martin, and my troublesome co-host. Today, we are a little bit excited to talk to Anthony Kelly because we are going to drill into why he's actually different as a recruitment agent. Welcome to the show. Thank you for having me. We can't hear him, so he's definitely going to have to get his headset working.
Yeah.
Better?
Yes.
A lot better.
That's strange. I've got the sound going into the mic and coming out of the computer.
Perfect.
This is why it's a very different recruitment agent from everyone else.
Yeah, technology recruitment.
Oh my gosh, the number of times I go into tech companies and their tech doesn't work, but that's another whole show that we're not having right now. So, Mr. Kelly, you and I actually met in Berlin, but tell me, how it is you're actually in Dublin, not in Berlin, and how you fell into this recruitment malarkey and how long you've been in the industry. Give us a bit of background.
Yes, so I've been doing recruitment for about 5.5 years now. I actually originally started off in telesales, like everyone does, working for IDG, which is a telemarketing media company.
What do you mean by everybody does? Oh, no, never done that.
Well,
I'd see contract recruitment, but not telesales.
Yeah, so I started off doing telemarketing, and then I got a message off an internal recruiter, took the call. I was like, actually, no, don't believe you. I'm going to stick here working 60, 70 hours a week for way less money because I'm working hard for this money. No way you can offer me more for well, they said the same amount of hours, but it was actually the same or more. So I started and I joined S3 in Dublin. And I worked with them for about 3 years.
Yeah.
I've done relatively well there. I used to do the recruitment for the test automation and the DevOps market. And then I'd done a brief stint in Sydney. I went to join a startup company over there. It didn't work out for me in Sydney, not so much the company. Personally, I struggled to stay there. I wasn't really in love with it. Came back to Ireland.
Too warm.
So can I just say?
Too warm. You missed the cold climate of Ireland.
No, but that's actually really lovely to hear because I get so bored of the conversation of why don't you live in Sydney? Sydney's actually quite a hard city to crack. It's like people have long established friendships and bonds. It's actually really hard to settle into. So it's actually nice to hear that from me because I've been saying this for a long time. This is why I choose to live in London, which I think is a bit easier.
Very honest, for me, it was because Irish people stick to Irish people. I went over for a career move. Irish people generally, when they go over there, they don't go over for a career move. They go working on sites and they go drinking a lot. So it was very hard for me to integrate with, I suppose, who should have been my social group. Yeah.
Or the locals. It's the same thing. So I know lots of people moved into state or from abroad. It's sorry for anyone listening who's from Sydney. You know I love you all, and I'll see you actually all in June. Even though I keep thinking it's July. I know when I'm going there, truly.
And then I came back from Ireland. I joined Indeed. Everyone knows Indeed. Massive job board as a account executive. I left after 6 months because I was given the opportunity with Aldous through the old director of S3, Mark Kelly, who basically taught me everything I know. And just has so much belief for Mark that he says he's setting up his own thing, and he wanted me to be the first man on the ship. So I was very, very happy to drop my 8-story floor building with 1,200 staff, free breakfast, free lunch, to go work in an office with a fireplace in the office.
Novel.
Yeah.
As you do. At least you'd be warm. Yeah. So is this in Dublin or in Berlin?
So this is our office was in Dublin. So my role is I do the recruitment for Berlin. So we've done a lot of a focus in understanding where we want the markets to start. So Mark speaks at a lot of these events. Previous to this, he'd done podcasts about, what I know now. We interviewed some of the largest leaders the biggest leaders from the largest tech companies worldwide, try to understand the challenges, the difficulties. Went to Gartner, read a lot of reports, met a lot of people over there, and he decided that from these findings, he found out that data science, unstructured data were the biggest challenges for all these tech companies. They can't get access to it. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to get it. So that's where our brand came in, our markets. And then we went quite ambitious. We started in North America, Dublin and Berlin at once.
Wow.
Yeah. So
just the two of you?
So there would be 3 other co-founders of the company.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was it. It was a pretty big move. So Mark set up the Dublin operations. There's a guy in the US, JP, who's been doing our North America, and then I was doing Berlin. And then the reason why I've been so much based in Dublin, probably about 30% of my time based in Dublin, is because we have an office here. We're a startup. We're 12 and a half months old. So we had to keep costs relatively sane.
Lean.
Yeah.
Run lean. That's cool, man.
I think with modern technology you can, though, really. Do we really need to be in posh offices? Plus, I think your clients appreciate not seeing you spending the fees as well. So
yeah, exactly. Offer them a good commercial model.
I'll never forget, I can't remember which agency it was, but actually it was the Sydney office they opened with this beautiful marble floor. And so the first comment that went on LinkedIn was, nice to see where my fees are going. So it's actually a selling point. So we've got our title, which I can show. This is so exciting.
Yay.
Standing out in a saturated recruitment agency world. I don't know if you knew that's what we were calling it. That's what I decided to call the show.
I seen it.
Yeah.
Because you said to me that you're different. So why?
Yes.
How?
And I was really curious.
So I think it actually.
About it. Yeah. I was just kind of thinking, how many agencies are out there, right? And how many agencies say we're very different to every other agent out there? We're a startup agency, so that makes us different as well. I was just like,
we're an IT agency, that makes us different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, and actually, we service clients, and we're not in that country. You know, I mean, come on, Anthony.
You've heard it before. I know.
Yeah. You've got to give us something special here, man.
I think so. I know I'm giving you cheek, but I did meet you in Berlin. You did make an impression, or you wouldn't be on the show. So
yeah, true.
No pressure for you to spill the beans again.
I mean, what do you say? Insults are the highest form of flattery in Ireland. So I'm okay with that. You know, you'll only insult someone if you don't believe it. You know, if you don't believe it at all, you don't say it. So mine actually it goes way back from when I actually started in S3. The director who actually took me over from S3 to Aldous, Mark, he had a very clear approach. He was top biller in S3. So when I joined, I always wanted to listen to him, but he wasn't billing when I joined. But if I had an issue, I was going to Mark. It was very much about, you know, being engaging, keeping your candidates first, meeting your candidates, very simple things. And I worked in an agency. There was 50 other people there in Dublin. Nobody was doing it. Even though they tell you they're doing it, they're saying they're doing it. Like every other agency is telling you they're doing it. So that kind of stood out for me, and it was something that was just really, really important. So it was having those quality relationships, not being someone's recruiter, but being their peer, and you know, having that managed. That look, it's fine. I can meet you now, but I'm not looking for money off you. I'm actually here to help you. And I've actually started doing a whole range of different things. I've started to do, like, you know, candidate interview preparation courses that I've actually made all my content available digital, and I send it to my candidates, whether we're getting them a job or not, whether they're looking for a job or not. We're like, hey, if you're looking to do it, here's one on how to do a CV. Here's one on how to prepare for an interview. Here's one on how to follow up from an interview. Here's like anything. Oh, you want to come to Berlin? Here's a 3-page PDF of things that you need to do and you need to research before you even think of coming to the city. Here's a salary survey. And then we're like, what do you think of all that information? Did you find that helpful? Can I help you further? So I think
giving some context.
Been a lack of that.
It's surprising, isn't it, how many people operate in kind of technology industry, but those kind of fundamentals like interviewing well, prepping for interview, the follow-up as well, you know, the importance of kind of actually interviewing and then following up and, you know, trying to get some feedback, get a decision timeline. You know, people often either don't do it or they rely very heavily on the agency to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's quite simple. You know, when I started off recruitment, it used to take me maybe 15 candidates to go in and interview for one of them to finally be a placement and one of them to get a job out of it. And then the more I realized, the less time I spent on getting multiple candidates and the more time I spent on making sure that less candidates were way more prepared, they were way more in knowledge. I just became just so much more efficient in what I was doing. Then I realized, okay, there's no magic to it. Clearly, let's just focus on making sure that people are very confident going into these interviews, and it's paid back. The candidates are like, oh, I've never felt like someone has helped me as much. Like, why are you doing this? I've never had this before.
It's crazy, right? We are in charge of somebody's career. I mean, I was having this conversation earlier, and there are two people specifically who, even now, 15 years on, would just come up and hug me and say, "You changed my world," because of the faith I had in them and getting them into a role. And it's like, I don't know where we forgot that along the way. That it's so important what we do.
As you said, the market became saturated. People start relying on quick wins, and unfortunately, quick wins aren't all that quick. And there's a lot more at stake than a short-term success.
And the market's a lot more competitive now, right? I mean, it's not as if I think it's a lot more competitive the more kind of senior you go as well. So you need to what?
Live show. Well, yeah, Banjo's just coming in.
Banjo.
The joy of live technology. Banjo decides to sit. This is where he sits. I turn to hide all the crap behind me when I'm live. So,
Anthony, do you find yourself getting a lot more referrals from people you help now as well? So they're more inclined to refer their peers and colleagues to you.
So it's actually funny. We have targets on referrals, and I don't know how many other recruitment companies would do that. They might target on regenerating a CV from a database or getting a new candidate from a reach out, but we actually target our consultants on getting a referral from a candidate who one we place or one we don't place. And it's proved pretty successfully. I actually, for the very first time, I had an inbound lead. Someone come to me and say, "Hey, I want to work with you. What's your terms?"
Oh wow!
Yeah, I had that for the first time. Someone came to my meetup and said that to me on Tuesday. "Hey, I'm looking for a data engineer. What's your terms?" I was like, "Okay, I've never had this before, but
that's what should happen. If you look after your candidates, they'll look after." So my contract IT people back in the day would get extensions for me. They would just go and negotiate it and make it happen and get and keep my rate and everything in the middle, because I looked after them. I did the same thing you're talking about. But when you're talking about CV information and salary surveys, having just judged the NORAs and had a look at a lot of websites, that kind of information is there on a lot of recruitment agents' websites. So what is it about you that's making you go, "But I'll share that"?
I don't think we've nothing to hide. We're just extremely transparent in absolutely everything. If I have a candidate with an interview and he's competing with two other candidates and they're both mine, I'll have the open conversation with all three of them. This is the situation you're in. I've got these guys. You've got as much chance of them because I'm giving them the same information that I'm giving you. And I'm not being like, "Oh, I don't know what's happening," or something's after coming in at the end. I'm shocked someone else got the job. And I'm also the same then when I'm dealing with my clients. It's like, okay, look, I've also got this candidate, two other final round interviews. This is where he stands. This is where his preference is. So it's up to you to make sure that you can blow him away in this final round for you to become his preferred choice. And it's actually
not complicated, isn't it?
It's
but candidates know, right? They know
that
there's one job and so many people going for it. So it just makes sense, to be honest.
It's just simple. I had I had experiences where it wasn't happening for me. When I was searching for recruitment roles when I was moving to Australia, and I was quite surprised about the whole thing. Because I was obviously being an experienced recruiter, 3.5 years at the time, I was like, I'm going to start critiquing these guys. It's just pretty underwhelming.
What was the most underwhelming experience you had, other than you didn't get feedback from an interview, because that's boring?
I had one actually when I got offered a role with Indeed about 2.5 years ago, before I actually moved to Australia. So I got offered a job with them again when I moved back.
Yeah.
The girl rang me and she said, "Oh, look, you've been offered the job." I was like, oh, okay. And I had to ask her why. And then her feedback was actually it was insane. Like, she was like, "Oh, so they actually mark you out of 50. Generally, people don't score above 45. You scored a 48. Here's the feedback." And it was like really good feedback. And I was like, you really should open up and tell me that feedback. Like, that was what would have got me excited, but it was the way she portrayed that information. I was just like, man, I didn't you've really made me undervalue this whole process.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yep. Actually, she was doing something great, but just that delivery, that.
Yeah. And I mean, it was just something then that, you know, you take this experience and you bring it back into your day, into your world, because this is what I do. And to see someone doing it in a way that I'd never do and see how it actually impacted me and affected me, I was like, okay, I can see how important this is.
And with regards to sort of content as well, that's not the only stuff that you do, right? So you do podcasts as well, right? So you're kind of, what's the context of the podcast?
Yeah, do LinkedIn. He'd really like LinkedIn Live. So now you've given it to myself and Glenn. If you could hand it over to Mr. Kelly as well. Thank you.
Yeah, he applies every week LinkedIn. So you need to pick that up at some point.
Yeah, you see me. So
and then I get it. Well, I didn't even ask for it. I want events though. Get me events. We could do a trade. Can I have your events?
I'll take that. But yeah, so like, the podcast kind of came through Mark. So Mark, when he was he done a What I Know Now podcast, which essentially went around, he interviewed top leaders in the industry. What do you know now that you would implement 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Ah, wow.
So it was a very, very simple concept, which led and he kept it going to when he founded all this. And I remember when he told me, he was like, hey, you're going to also do podcasts. Listen to one or two of mine, and this is what it's going to be like. I was like, great. So we just talk about like how companies are implementing data science, how they're using it, why they're using it, how it impacts the customer, technologies they're using, challenges they faced. It's funny, in data science, it's so technical, but the biggest challenge people actually have is with people, how data science interacts with the users, the product team, the business teams, and they can't get they can't work together because they're almost sitting so far away from each other in two different worlds that they just know nothing about each other. So it's in a way, it's kind of like bridging that gap for the technical people and making them understand that this is the problem that's real. And it's not only me telling you this, it's maybe 60, 70 other leaders of other companies who are all facing this problem. So they can all talk about the technical challenge all day, every day, but really when it comes to it, there's a few other things that they need to change. And it's a little bit of education around that. And there's also like, there's some really good topics.
Means by you doing that, you understand the roles, you understand the challenges, you can have much more sensible conversation with your candidates and your clients. So you're actually adding value. So
that's it. It's allowed me to give me so much more knowledge about the industry that I probably would have taken me another 2 or 3 years to get up to. And then in a sense that, you know, it's leading into my meetups. I'm meeting with some of these top people who are speaking at, you know, data natives, Pi Data, you know, some of the biggest conferences.
Pi Data.
Yeah. But some of the biggest data conferences in the world. And I'm meeting with these guys, creating good relationships with them, and I'm then saying, oh, look, we've done a podcast together, let's do a meetup together. And then people are able to have actionable goals about what they do in their job. They can listen to this. The industry is packed up with, you know, white papers, research papers that are 40, 60, 80 pages just to see what the new stuff is. Yeah. You can listen to an 18, 20-minute podcast and get the same impact. And that's something of it. And you can say if that's something that you want to pursue or if it's something that you don't. And you'll know very quickly.
Anthony, do you see yourself as more community building than kind of the straightforward kind of recruitment play, as it were?
I would have actually. I was making jokes in the office that I've become a professional networker. I've done recruitment. I've not done any. I'm not a cold caller. I'm a relationship builder. I'm just meeting really interesting people, having really interesting conversations, and then bringing this all back. So even as well in Ireland, we also run a local level awards for AI and data science, but we're also going to be doing that in Berlin in the future as well, just as another way to say, look, this is there's a lack of recognition in here. You guys sit beside a sales team. The sales team don't ask you what you're doing because they don't understand. So you come home, you try and tell your wife about your day or your husband, they don't understand. So the only people that will tell you, hey, good work, is your peers. So we're connecting all these peers together through a bunch of different events, and like I suppose, as you said, community events we're calling them.
Yeah. So I mean, if we take the stereotypical kind of agency recruiter who spends maybe 6 or 7 hours per day at the desk on LinkedIn Recruiter, pinging out emails, and then cold calling
No, it's
for
highly
leads.
personalized, Glenn. What are you talking about?
Well, yeah, like I say, I'm broadly generalising. How does your week look? Because we were talking before the show. You've been over in Berlin. You're back in Dublin today. You're talking about events, meetups, and all that sort of thing. How does your typical week look? How does it subdivide up?
Yeah, so Monday I flew to Berlin. Tuesday I had an event. Wednesday I had a roundtable. Thursday I recorded a few podcasts and flew home. And now I'm here. But I also have a team. I'm also the manager of a team here in Dublin. And the team would be like my talent acquisition specialists, who would all be given a centralized focus market. There's not a data specialist. There's someone who's a data engineering specialist, or a data scientist specialist, and a data analytics specialist. They're not ands. They're all you're one or the other, to make sure that we can be specialized in our delivery in our core areas. And what they're doing is that, in a way, we're trying to get them to do what I'm doing, and build these networks and communities around their specialized, individualized areas, so that, whereas for me, in the ideal world, that will help me build out and develop clients, and then for these guys, it's going to help them build out and develop really strong relationships with future and potential job seekers.
Yeah, so it's a bit of brand building as well, like personal brand building. Yeah, would you say?
Yeah, I would say we all have our own individualized personal brands.
Yeah, I mean, Katrina, if we reflect back to the very agency days when we first, started in that unnamed agency. I mean, you kind of compare
technology.
You compare kind of Anthony's week now to what we were doing on the desk side then, and it shows you how much, or certain parts of the kind of agency world has really progressed, and how some are still doing exactly what we did 10 plus years ago.
We have a question.
Oh, question.
Oh, we're live. I know. I managed, in case anyone thought I tuned out, I managed to. Yes. So Harvey Bennett, co-founder of AI Recruitment Technology. How do you manage candidates who are unsuccessful in your agency screening process? I hear a lot from recruiters who go the extra mile for candidates who are interviewed by their client, but naturally, for every 15 that go forward, there are hundreds who don't.
Wow, that's a massive question.
Yeah, but that's okay, because we have time.
It's actually
down a bit.
It's a great question, and so this is where
up LinkedIn by going in twice.
This is where our training and all that we provide come into place. We'll try and bring a candidate along, so that we would see them obviously as much as a placeable candidate, help them through interview processes, coach them the entire way from, as I said, CV, and you just got to be very clear with them. You've got to understand when they have a CV, they think it's great and they think it's fine. No, I don't need to change it. Or they might have already got 1 or 2 interviews. I'm like, no, I'm already getting interviews. I don't need to change my CV. It's like, that's great. I was like, but for these opportunities, you will need to change your CV, because your CV isn't reflective of what you've just told me.
Yeah.
So that could be a start. And then it would be, interview preparation. We do sometimes mock interviews. I've actually in some cases sat in on technical interviews, and I've got an opportunity to take a lot of notes. Got to ask the managers specifically, what did you like about this candidate, about that candidate? What made their answer so good? And then I've kind of tried to create like a guideline as to how you should do that then when you're attempting an interview. What prep should you be looking at? How much should you know about the company? How should you style your answers? So that's at the coming into it stage. And then, as I mentioned, because we have set up our market so small, like I know a majority of our competitors, our core area would be BI, analytics, data science, data engineering. So we've got 4 consultants, each one looking after each area of those. I know with our competitors, majority of the time, they've got 1 consultant looking after all 4. And that's what I'm seeing on the market. And this has allowed us to, so if you're that person and you get the positive feedback, you send 6 candidates in, you get positive feedback for 3, you chase those 3 candidates, try and push them through. You got too busy, you say goodbye to the other 3, lack of feedback, that's fine. But I think because we've segregated our markets and made them so small and specialized, that it's put an onus on us to ensure that our candidates are actually getting this feedback, because you're not You're not overwhelmed. You're not saying, oh, I've got a data analyst here, but I need to get a data engineer set up for interview. They're all analysts. They're all relevant to you now, and they're all going to be relevant to you in 6 months, in 9 months, in 12 months.
How about when your clients won't give you feedback?
Oh, so that's me. So that's my role. Is I'm very much client facing. I've not actually been hit with that situation yet, and I think I don't know if it's because I know it's strange.
That's a surprise.
I'm wondering is it
most
because
of them are like, hey, I'm sorry, Anthony, it wasn't the right fit. Yeah, thanks for that. And how's that going to help that candidate going forward?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think it's because the conversation we're having now, I'm very clear and upfront with clients and with candidates. We're setting these expectations versus the company who says, yeah, here's our terms, fine, let's work together. It's like, here's our terms, but I want to speak to you before we go through them. I want to tell you about our processes, about how we operate as an agency, and let me tell you why it's important that we operate this way and how it's important to you. And then we're reciprocating a lot of, your branding on the market. If you're looking for very senior leaders, if you're going to be looking for future growth and staff, there's only so many people doing this industry. So you not giving one person interview feedback could go to one bad Glassdoor review, could go to 10, could go to 20. And then candidates are going to offer stage. They're comparing you with company A to company B. They're like, oh, we're not actually going to take your job because you've got a 2.2 rating and you've got 10 one-star reviews of people who didn't get interview feedback. So
do you?
I love the Glassdoor interview review.
But that's it. Do you genuinely think, Anthony, that companies are taking Glassdoor and such review sites as seriously as they should do? Because I still get this impression that there's a minority of companies that take it really seriously, but in the main, a lot of them just don't. They don't.
Yeah, well, I think until you highlight it to them, it's not important. They don't look at their Glassdoor reviews. We will. We will, and we'll tell them how we're going to impact it and what impact that's going to have.
I'm not sure I would actually recruit for a company that had really bad reviews.
I think it wouldn't work. But then again, it's an education piece. So I'd always say we're trying to educate our candidates on seeking jobs. We're also trying to educate our clients on how to hire and how to hire successfully. It's not hiring one person today that's going to make you great at growing a team. It's you building a good process around this. And unfortunately, whether it takes a little bit more time from you, it might be 5 minutes after every interview, you're going to have to write up feedback. You're going to have to tell me why. And then the luxury of it is
very basic. It is payment for the time that they have invested prepping, getting to, and being at the interview, and the stress. Yeah. So if it's 5 minutes from the hiring manager, you're just paying them for their time.
Exactly. And then, it helps us help the candidate if we've more options for them. Even if we don't, we will still tell them, look, I'm sorry, we don't have anything else for you, but if you have another opportunity, here's how I would approach it based on the feedback we've received from you.
You could change someone's life with that one bit of feedback.
But it's like it's happened before, and we've seen some results come in out of it where we haven't directly placed the candidate, but they've come back and said to us, "Oh, I'm going to be hiring, and I'd like to use all this."
Keith just come in with a question. Hey, Keith. So I'd like to understand how Anthony meets diversity needs of clients and thoughts around and thoughts around support of candidates with various neurodiversity-based challenges such as dyslexia and autism. So
we had that conversation.
And Keith's from that very company. So hey, Keith, thanks for the question.
I tell you, Recite.me, we have to have a conversation because at every single presentation I give, I tell everybody to use that product.
You're on notice now, Keith.
I want every single career site on the planet to have that product on their career site.
For sure. Specific to your kind of your vertical, your specialism, your area. I mean, is that something that you kind of come up against, Anthony, in terms of kind of that kind of neurodiversity and sort of the challenges around that at all?
I suppose not so much. The diversity that we come up across, it's not only male, female. It's also coming up from background, because you could be a data scientist and be an ex-software engineer. You could be a machine learning engineer, but used to be a data analyst. You could come from an economics background and be a data scientist. You could be. I've seen a lot of people with neuroinformatics, biology, and they're all in data science now. So what they're actually looking for in terms of diversity is they're looking for a mix of people who would have like statistical backgrounds, maths backgrounds, but then they might also complement them and put them up in tandem with someone who's a very proficient software engineer, and that they're gonna work almost not against each other, but the guy in maths isn't going to be as strong of an engineer, or the girl, and then vice versa. So they're mixing up on that, because it's to build these products and to build these platforms, you need a bit of everything, and there's a lot more to it than the type of person. It's more so their background that actually really impacts a lot of these things.
Yeah.
You know, if you get the economics person, might turn out to be the person who really embeds themselves into the product and into the business. And you need that person in your business because he also sits in the data science team, and he's going to then tell the data science team what and how the rest of the company sees what they're doing and what they want to see from them. So it's not so much on that, but it's more so a little bit more of everything.
Cool. And sorry for the long pause there. I've got the other laptop open, and I saw out of the corner of my eye Katrina waving at me, and I was like, "What?" And then I realised it was on the other laptop. Oh dear.
You know, we're giving it away. You do realise we're now giving it away that we mightn't have been actually live a couple of times on this show. I've gone really blurry. Come back. Oh, I'm back. Oh, I'm blurry. Yes.
Oh,
so because we've been a bit scared about the technology. So as you can probably tell this week, we're actually live, which is really exciting. So
it's cool to be there.
And most of the time we will be. There might be occasional pre-record go out because of my travel.
You know,
I travel.
Because you're traveling a lot. You know.
Traveling's good. I like it. I keep making mistakes though.
It still blows my mind that I literally flew into Prague and back out of Prague again yesterday, like within a day. It just blows my mind I can do that, because as an Australian, you don't get anywhere in an hour and a half. So yeah.
So Anthony, you're a team leader. What advice do you give to new joiners to your team? So taking aside, you know, kind of obviously the construct of the business and how you onboard people, what's your kind of one-to-one advice to new joiners? You know, how do you kind of, you know, get them ready to be part of what sounds like a really cool and a high-performing team?
Yeah, so like I think it's, in a weird way, I know everyone says we don't have KPIs. I would say we've replaced our KPIs with standards. So if it would still be a KPI, but it's a standard, and it's just ensuring that when we're speaking to people, look, offer them everything you can. Offer them this. Are you looking for a job? Offer them this. If you're not looking for a job, offer them this. Tell them to tune into a podcast. And it's more so just becoming very much just being a consultant and less being a recruiter. And I think that's their message, and that's who we want to be. Because at the end of the day, no offense, no one really loves agency recruiters.
Really?
But it's funny hearing you say that, though, because this reminds me. So I started with what was Best People, and I was taught the very consultancy side back in 2003. And then it became more like Cowboys as we went on. But it started that way, and then the technology got in the way. It's like you're coming back full circle and just going, look, let's use the technology to create more community, to create more consultation, rather than just as a barrier to.
As I said, you call me 1980s. I really like that.
That's cool. But to your point, Anthony, I think you're right. Then.
Right.
Like agency recruiting gets a bad rep, right? And that's historic. I think generally those of us are agency side now and continue to be so. You know, the standards are getting higher, and a lot of that kind of old school transactional approaches, people are just not bothered by it now. They have technology to circumvent that type of interaction. So I think, you know, agencies like yourself that are trying to offer and share knowledge right up front before there's anything commercial involved, that's only going to enhance the reputation of the recruitment industry as a whole. Because let's be fair, if you're in-house or agency, sometimes when you say recruiter to somebody, they just lump you in to the same pot, right?
Humans don't know, not humans, sorry. Humans outside of the industry don't understand there's an in-house and an agency side in general. Yeah. And we've both sides have their faults as well.
Yeah. And we've got to advocate for, you know, higher standards as an industry as a whole. You know, we've got to be the ones really sort of demanding more of ourselves and kind of, you know, sort of setting those standards, you say, for peers. And that's the way I think the industry will really evolve. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's little things. Like my focus when we get someone who's relatively new, whether they've done recruitment or not before, what I want them to do is I want them to be able to watch my videos on how I tell a candidate to prepare them for an interview, how to prepare your CV, tell them how to relocate, what to consider. And that, like, we're more so putting that ahead than, hey, where have you applied? Where's the leads for me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of the way I like it. I think we focus on building trust and building rapport above everything. So it's a little bit different when you come in and you say, okay, here's an empty data, or here's a database, ring 20 people in the next 8 hours, and I'll come back to you and I'll follow up on your leads. Thank you.
Old school.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Heebie-jeebies. We have just a few minutes left. So, where does one locate the podcast?
Oh,
yes, not our podcast. Obviously, you all know where that is.
Yes, our podcast show. It's called. We've got two. We've got AI in Action, and we've also got AI Mentors. You'll find them all on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, or if you go onto the Aldous website, we have a drop-down menu for podcasts.
For those that don't understand your Irish accent, how is that spelled?
AI. So
no,
AI.
Aldous.
Action.
Just remembering I have an Australian accent, so you know those in glass houses should not throw stones.
Yes. So
is it ALL?
Aldous.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's quality.
Sorry, it's genuinely true that some people will struggle to understand the accent, like they don't understand mine.
So it's
ComedyGold.com.
It's the Social Recruiting Show. It's Friday. We have fun. Hence it's social.
That's cool. And
good.
And events-wise, where can people catch up with you?
Message me on LinkedIn. My email is anthony@aldous.com. Very happy to connect. I'm always in Berlin, sometimes in Dublin.
Sometimes his car is stuck in Dublin.
The airport. I'm going to get it after this, though. I'm only human.
Absolutely. I couldn't believe it. So I arrived in Prague without an adapter for. Can you imagine running out of power? Like, thank goodness. Yeah. And I'm like, how often do I travel?
I had that as well. So I've got a power bank all the time now.
That's what I need.
Good move.
Anywho, thank you so much. You were very patient because I think we actually met a few months back. And yes, so thank you for continuing to pester so that you came on the show.
No, I
really enjoyed the chat, Anthony. Thank you.
Really fun.
Completely. Next week we'll be back to normal time for the US as well, because your clocks will have changed. So it will be back to 10 a.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, because we're now over summer. Quite clearly, quite dark. It's 20 to 4. Very depressing. Anywho, thank you again, Anthony. Appreciate so much you coming on the show. Thank you, Glenn, of course, and we shall see you all next week. Thank you for being here.
Bye.
Bye.